Very good afternoon, and thanks for clicking on to the Saturday edition of Hogan's European Outlook. As I've said already, time and time again, there is so many things going on at the moment, it is rather hard to keep up. The stratospheric warming, the minor sudden stratospheric warming, is pretty much peaking at the moment above our heads and above the North Pole. You can see here, this is the latest 10 HPA temperatures of the GFS showing very, very strong warming on the basically the Siberia to North America side of the pole. So this is, of course, the 10 millibars. So this is the upper levels of the stratosphere. But what I've noticed here is the coincidence or non-coincidence of the amount of cold air that we've got on the over Scandinavia at the moment, and the fact that we've seen this kind of warming taking place now for, I would say, a good 3-4 weeks, where we've had this displacement of the PV on the North Atlantic and European side of the pole. Now, we've seen these countless displays of nacreous or polar stratospheric clouds, and the question I would ask is, have we seen somewhat of a downwell and a propagation downwards from stratosphere into the troposphere? Because you could argue that the core of the coldest air anywhere in the northern hemisphere, especially compared to average, is actually residing over Norway, Sweden, and Finland at the moment. So I suppose it's a bit of a kind of side question, if you will, with regards to the overall situation. But certainly the PV is relatively weak. We have got a minor stratospheric warming situation taking place at the moment, and that may be helping hook up with the strong amplified phase 8, well, actually 1 into 2 and now into 3 of the MJO. So the combination of the weak PV and also the phase 2 and the 3 amplified form over the Indian Ocean, this could be helping set up the cold. Now, as already explained, the period between the 10th and the 20th of January is highlighted by myself for the core of the coldest conditions. This is the latest outbreak of cold air, and I've been making mention of the Manchurian oscillation time and time again. You're probably fed up with me talking about it, but really, this has been a very, very good indicator as to where we're going with the weather pattern. A particular weather pattern, really, from the end of the summer through the autumn and then into the first half of the winter season. So, to recap, where have we been so far? During the month of November, we've seen the North Atlantic. Let's have a look and actually pull up the North Atlantic oscillation and see where it's been. So you can see here that we had a firmly negative NAO really through the majority of this year, by the way, but particularly so during the month of October. Then we've seen the MJO going back into the warmer version 3 and 4 into 5, and we've seen the NAO going into positive territory. So we've seen the amplified 8 into 1 of the MJO. We've seen the NAO going into negative territory briefly. Then we've seen it going back into positive territory, and the models did indicate that it was going into the phases 4 or 5, which then made me right away say we're going to have a December warm-up. So the first 5 days, 7 days of December 2023 started off rather cold indeed. Then as the MJO rotated into phases 3, 4 and 5, we've seen the positive NAO, and now that it's went back into a strong phase 1 into 2, there's no denying the fact that we're going to go back into negative territory, and the response to this should be a colder signal here. But we'll look at the details in just a second here, because the question is, how cold are we going to get? What kind of snow prospects do we have with this upcoming cold spell? How long will it last? Well, certainly, based on some of the latest model output, my suggestion would be that we are going to go back into the potentially into phases 4 and 5 once again, which would then suggest to me that the period towards the end of January warms back up again. We see the NAO and the AO going back positive once again, just like we've seen during the middle portion of December. So, yeah, watch this space. Let's see what happens as we go through the next 20 or so days. But the upcoming 5 days off the GFS ensemble looks like this here. In the 6 to 10 day, it looks like this. Still below average conditions. Nothing extreme, I don't think, but it depends on the area of high pressure. How much does it retrograde up towards Greenland, etc., etc. The position, the strength, all will be a determining factor. How much snow can we get on the ground? That will also be a major player. But even the 11 to 15 day off the GFS ensemble, you can see here that it still has firmly below average conditions, which is the period between the 15th and the 20th of January. If we look at the 850 or the 500 millibar geopotential height anomalies here, you can see that retrogression of the high. So the upcoming 5 days, you've got the block to the north, you've got the negative to the south. We do pull in some of that low-level cold air that has seen temperatures into the 30s and 40s below zero in Norway, Sweden, and Finland, the coldest temperatures since 1999. That area of high pressure building across the northern half of the UK will act as a wheel, drawing some of that low-level cold air into the UK and Ireland here. In the 6 to 10 day, you can see here that that area of high pressure, according to GFS ensemble, is pulling to the west here up towards Greenland. And the all-important 11 to 15 day, you can see here that that negative NAO probably peaks in intensity. If we look at the northern hemispheric view, you can see that the Greenland block is in the position that you would want to see it with regards to cold weather across the UK and Ireland here. With regards to snow prospects, however, you tend to want to see areas of low pressure coming in from a south to southwesterly direction with the cold block in place. Now, this is the ECMWF. We looked at the GFS yesterday. Let's have a look at the ECMWF and see how the pattern evolves. So remember, we've got the very, very cold, low-level area. I keep emphasizing the word low-level because the 850 temperatures aren't tremendously cold compared to what we've got at the surface. What we are going to see is a slight easing of that cold over Scandinavia over the next few days here, but nonetheless, we will, with the help of higher pressure building over the northern UK, we will see some of that cold air drift its way underneath the high and into the UK here. Now, that area of high pressure is going to be the all-important game changer in terms of precipitation in particular, because we're sick and tired of heavy rainfall. This will be welcome news, of course, but it's all that eyes on the west and north Atlantic. As that deepening of low pressure takes place, we're seeing the area of high pressure, one to the southwest of the UK, one to the northeast of the UK, kind of essentially link up, and then you kind of follow the isobars. It's drawing some of that very, very cold air over Western Russia, so the core of the cold is actually shifting out of Scandinavia into Western Russia. We're going to see some of that cold air drifting its way across Poland, Germany, Holland, and into the British Isles here. Now, as we skip through the next several days, you can see the area of high pressure becoming stronger and stronger. Well, that's essentially shutting down the Atlantic, so this frontal system separating lower pressure to the west, higher pressure to the east is going to get stopped in its tracks because of the building heights over the eastern side of the UK. But what happens is, I think what will take place is that high then becomes focused over the top of the UK, and it essentially traps the cold that it's been drawn for several days between Saturday right the way through till Monday and Tuesday, where we're going to have some fairly brisk winds coming in from an east to northeasterly direction. Where those winds are blowing, temperatures probably slightly above the freezing mark, feels below freezing, but underneath that high itself, I think what we're going to find is an inversion takes place. So temperatures at Cairngorm summit level will actually be close to the freezing mark, but down to Aviemore, down kind of say 800 to 1,000 feet above sea level, frost will become established, And when you've got that thickening frost day by day, nights become colder. Now, it all depends on cloud cover. If we have cloud cover, it won't get as cold, of course. But I think what will happen is this air mass will become colder in place, with days becoming colder, nights becoming colder. And this is how we will establish this current cold spell. So you can see as we skip all the way to the end of next week, we still have that high, that quite a strong 1044 millibar area of high pressure that's slightly drifting towards the northwest. Yes, still holding on, if you notice here, all the way to the end of next week. By the time we reach the end of next week, daytime temperatures may not get above freezing, especially with fog in place as well. Daytime temperatures may be stuck well below freezing. The frost, hoarfrost, becomes quite thick on the trees and outdoor surfaces, and I think it's going to be that type of process. Rather than it being a snowy pattern, it's going to be cold and dry. I think that is exactly where we're going to with this type of situation here. And I think by the time we reach the end of next week, we could see, widespread daytime temperatures really struggling to get above the freezing mark up and down the land. Overnight temperatures may get in the double digits below freezing, by the way, and there will be very little in the way of snow. But you notice here, off the latest ECMWF, we do have that battle now between colder air, that block of cold air that's been shifted, displaced away from Scandinavia into the western side of Europe. That storm track is now centered well to the south near Iberia and into France. And we need to pay attention to these areas of low pressure, trying to move up into that cold air. We may get some significant threats of snow. So it will get rather interesting, I think, as we go forward here. Let's have a look at the ECMWF 850 temperature chart before we look at the snow chart here. So if we look at the 850s, you can see here that the cold air is established over Scandinavia at the moment. You've got a core of the cold over Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia at the moment here. We've kind of eroded away a little bit of that cold air further west over Norway and Sweden, and the reason why we've got influence coming in off the Atlantic, hence the mega snowfalls that we've seen in recent times. But you notice here that as we play through the loop, some of that cold air is getting drawn westwards as that high becomes stronger over the northern UK. Notice here that warm advection transferring warmth from the Azores all the way up into Iceland, the eastern side of Greenland. In comes that cold underneath the area of high pressure. And you notice here that beneath the high, the center of the high itself, and to the north of the center, the temperature isn't that cold. But if we look at the 850, if we look at the 2-meter temperature anomalies, it's a different story altogether. It's colder than average here. So we've got that inversion in place. Look at the temperatures over Scandinavia. We've lost the extreme cold. That now has been drifted all the way around through the center of Europe into the western side of Europe. And look at Greenland and look at Iceland here. We've got that warm air advection that's pumping heat into the higher latitudes here. And that is that classic negative NAO signal here. Look at the snow depth and see what's happening here. And this is exactly what I've been saying. This is not a particularly snowy pattern, by the way, but it'll be interesting towards the end of next week and beyond. Do we start to see an increase in snow threat here? Easterly winds can always deliver some snow to eastern areas and across the north, but generally speaking, you notice here there is very, very little shift in terms of snow prospects here as we go through the next wee while here. So it's all to play for. Daytime temperatures become increasingly cold, nighttime temperatures equally so as we progress through the course of next week here. So an interesting period coming up, and like I said already, it looks as if towards the period 20th and beyond, we may start to see the Atlantic regroup once again before we have more prospects of cold into the early portions of February here. So let's watch and see what happens in the days to come. Stay tuned, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll have the 75th edition of the Global Weather Report come tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.